Sweet.
We are live.
Hey, out there. Hey, everyone out there in YouTube world. We have two very amazing special guests today with the Explain It podcast with Caroline and Ingrid. We are going to talk to Kirsten and Julie about an amazing foundation that they're with. Caroline is still making her way back to Hot Zona. She's currently in the beautiful state of California in San Jose, enjoying the weather. But we are excited about what we're going to talk about today because I know that I have a lot of questions. I have properties that I own that I think are good models for what Kirsten's going to talk to us today. And I also know that when I first met Caroline, one of the things that made me fall in love with her is that she had this goal that said she wants to make a world a better place for like moms who are single or have been through like domestic violence. And I was like, wow, that's so amazing. That's somebody with such a big heart. So now we have to figure out, how do we do that? How do we help people out there who have some of those needs? And we do believe that Kirsten and Julie can help us kind of pave the way for what that looks like. So Kirsten, if maybe you want to give us a little bit about your background and what you're doing, and have the audience get to know you.
Sure. Thank you. And thank you for having us on. We really appreciate it. So I am the founder and CEO of Katie's House Foundation. We have shared housing based in Birmingham, Alabama, but I personally also do land development in Arizona. So we have two different offices. Katie's House Foundation was put together because of the lack of affordable housing, and also because we have a gap for people who are just starting out, starting over, or maybe they're on fixed income. And so you can read my personal story on our website at katieshousefoundation.org. But essentially, after spending 20 years in real estate, banking, being an investment banker for Wells Fargo and Union Bank and Bear Stearns and some others, and then getting into investing, I had a calling to nonprofit work. And so we teach financial literacy, which is really important as an exit strategy for people who, didn't get that in high school, or maybe from their parents around the dinner table, because people just have to work so many hours. You normally have both parents working or guardians working. And so at Katie's House Foundation, we touch on several different things, but we look at housing first to make sure that, again, people that are at risk, whether they're children or adults, that they have a beautiful house. Basically, what the foundation does is we will arbitrage houses, or we will look to purchase them through creative financing. And this is throughout the United States. We're building an investor network. And then we will work with government bodies to basically sublease those rooms. So that's the gist of it. And then Julie is here, actually. She's on our committee, and she has a great, background as well that helps the foundation. So can I pass it to Julie and she can tell us about herself?
Absolutely.
Hi, everyone. I'm Julie Ferraro. I'm actually a retired law enforcement officer in the Chicagoland area, north of Chicago. I actually currently am a detective for another department, and I sit on the board for Cook County's Drug, Alcohol, and Veterans Court. So I do deal with a lot of the people that Kirsten is referring to when they need to go to a sober living, or they need to go somewhere because they have nowhere to be, and they've exhausted all the other avenues, and just not affordable, whether it's in Birmingham, Alabama, or if it's around here. It's very difficult to get affordable housing. So I do have my investments. I have rental properties myself. So I bring to the table a little bit of realism when it comes to being the owner of these shared housing places, and knowing, and Kirsten and I have had discussions about, her safety, the choices that we make as investors, Our bottom line is a lot of times money, and what we can do to help other people, but at the same time protect our investment and make the best one we can.
Yeah. Wow. Go ahead, Kirsten.
I was just going to say, absolutely. There are so many populations when we talk about, either sober living, people coming out of rehab, and so where do they go if they don't have a job is one thing. And so sometimes they might have grants, to stay somewhere for 12 weeks, for example, while they kind of get their feet underneath them. And then there's aged out foster care, right? There's domestic abuse victims. There's veterans. The list really, you can think of a lot of different populations who do need the housing, and they also need the financial literacy that comes with our particular Katie's House Foundation housing, because we want them, after they stay in one of our rooms between 6 months and 2 years, they can come and go whenever they want, quite frankly, because the way that we have it set up for our investors is that being a nonprofit licensed as a shelter, there's no lease, which is really unique. And so there's not the landlord relationship that there would be in a typical LLC situation. But, specific to, I guess we could get a little bit more into that later, but what Julie was talking about as far as, right, being on the beat and being a cop, and she's having to take people out of these situations where, like even hoarding situations, right, Julie, where they don't have anywhere to go, and the city is telling them you've got to find somewhere to go, and she has to put them somewhere. Now, what I'm getting at is the gap. So the gap is the private investors, right? We have houses, and we have those, let's call them Airbnbs right now, right? They're furnished, and we're making a certain amount on those annually, and we have certain expenses annually. The gap is that we need to offer those to government bodies and nonprofits and work out a contract with them where they will actually pay to lease those rooms or those beds, and then the money just drops in the account, sometimes whether the bed is full or not. But it's really this gap that Katie's House Foundation, on the investor side, we're trying to build an alliance. And then those rents can be, up to 4 times what you might normally get, depending on what market you're in.
Wow. I'm sitting here because I actually have a couple of properties that I am hoping to have by the end of August. They're high bedroom count properties. One's 5 bedrooms. The other one is 6 bedrooms. The other one used to be a group home. And actually it instigated the question I have, which is how, like, the people who operate these properties, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm just the landlord, that I'm allowing my property to be used in such a way, correct? Or do I have to have a more active role in who goes in the house? And
so you have 2 options when it comes to how much you want to be involved. The alliance that we're building out at Katie's House Foundation is basically where we're going to look to vet people who want to take our 12-hour class, and then they would know how we do things, and we can support each other. And then the foundation already has its nonprofit, we're an established entity, so we're already moving, right? And so that saves an investor quite a lot of time. And then we already have things in place, the logistics of the property manager, right? The maintenance, we know the model essentially. And we have a lot of the standard operating procedures and the documents in place. And so that's model number 1, where an investor essentially says, hey, either I'll take your class or I don't want to take your class, but you can lease one of my properties, and you, Katie's House Foundation, can go and do, whatever you'd like with it. And we do a lease. If you take the class and you want to be involved, then, you can make more money that way, and you can be more involved. Again, those are both under the Katie's House Foundation umbrella. We do have an investor, even right now today, who wants to do veterans housing. And, she wants to potentially set up her own nonprofit. And so if that's the case, we still recommend that you take the 12-hour class. And then we'll put you in touch. We'll refer you just to an attorney. We don't get paid for that or anything, but they'll set you up with your own nonprofit. To get a 501c3 from the IRS can take a couple months. It is hard to get those approved sometimes. You definitely wouldn't want to use just any attorney. You need to make sure to use an attorney who knows what we're doing so they can write it up properly. And that way you get those tax benefits and all the other nonprofit benefits that go with that. But essentially, if you wanted to set up your own nonprofit, you can do that too. And then you can be highly involved and run it how you want to.
That's cool. I love that. Oh,
I'm
thank
just going to
you.
show this up on the screen so everybody could see it. So guys, this is their website right here. And I just threw it up so you guys can also see it. katieshousefoundation.org, correct?
Yes, correct.
Beautiful. All right, Ingrid, I'm going to let you go because I feel like I usually manhandle the questions at the beginning of this. So I'll rapid fire mine afterwards. But what are your questions for?
I'm ready. Fire away.
Oh, you know I got them.
Well, I think you alluded that if we wanted to know a little bit about how you got started to go check out your website. But okay, so if an investor wants to get started with you, they go to your website. Like, do you have like a collection of information? Like, how does that process start?
So from the investor perspective, you would actually just need to reach out to me directly or Julie. We're going to be launching our Katie's House Foundation YouTube channel on Saturday this week. That actually is, we'll be putting stuff up there, but we have to be cognizant of the fact that we're talking also to the at-risk population. Katie's House Foundation, right? We have a lot of residents. And so they're tuning in for mostly financial literacy and like tips and, things of that nature. And then the Normalized Money show, which is every weekend, we do this show that Julie and I tape off. That's directed at teens ages 15 to 19. So to answer your question, there's two things. They can jump on and subscribe to our channel at Katie's House Foundation. That would be awesome. And then they can also email me, Kirsten at katieshousefoundation.org. Just because we're going to be talking about their personal numbers. And so that's not something that, if they have a house like yourself, which we're going to go through an example. And I told you we could use loose numbers, right? But generally we want to have a more serious conversation on email or on a phone call.
Yeah. That's
every demographic is going to be different because the demographic that Kirsten's with in Arizona, and I understand, Ingrid, you're in Arizona too right now, is completely different than me in the Midwest. And my clientele is also going to be a little bit different too. And my housing prices, my, expenses and stuff. So it isn't just something that you want to say, oh, this is a blanket thing. I think the percentages that we talk about that we can make as an investor for instead of a 1 month rent that we can make on a per room rent is quite substantial. But like Kirsten was mentioning, there's a different type of insurance that you're going to need, that you'll want to set up more of like a shelter, as not to have a relationship with a lease and things like that with your actual room renters. It gives you more power when it comes to, there's a problem, the guy's over there threatening everybody in the house, we can call the police and say he's out, and under those kind of rules they can throw those people out. Whereas, as we all know, as landlords, there's not a whole lot, oh, you got to evict, you can't, so that might scare people. But there are, it's one of those things where we got to talk to you and see what your circumstances are and where you're at and how it would work for you. But if you want to go through some numbers, I think people would probably be really interested in hearing about that for sure.
I have a tactical question. So like, what if I'm a mother with like 2 or 3 kids? Like, how do you divvy out rooms? Is that a scenario that you guys work through? Because we actually have a couple of folks in our world. They posted somewhat publicly. I won't say their name, but they're in tough situation. It's a mom with kids. And I'm like, geez, would this actually help her in the scenario she's in? But like, I would feel weird with my kids. Like, I don't know what that would look like in a house.
So I think that's a really great question. And when you say like, I feel like a little bit something, right? That's actually, we should touch on homelessness and why people would rather remain unsheltered than go into a homeless shelter. And the reason for that is because large shelters versus a boutique single family shelter, right? So Katie's House Foundation, we offer boutique single family shelters. We screen everybody who we let in through a background check, and our insurance does not allow for anybody with violent offenses, sexual misconduct, arson, or housing as a condition of parole. And so we're looking for these red flags, and that makes people feel like, oh, okay, well, that's different than me taking my 3 children and going to this public shelter. And they really just let in everyone because they have so many people that are being, foreclosed or evicted. And, those people have lost their jobs, or they've had a medical situation, or maybe they're aged out foster care and they never even had enough money to ever be making 3 times the rent and have a 700 credit score. So they never even had a chance. But when you commingle so many different populations under one house, that's where I think that I feel a little bit out of sorts comes from. And so to answer your question, under our model, each house, or if you had a 2-unit, for example, you could decide, even under Katie's house, you could say, listen, I want my house to be used for single mothers, right? And so that would be the special purpose assigned to the house.
Yeah.
And so then that would be it, is we would screen for single mothers and they would still have to do, every adult has to do that background check annually. And then, it's really then becomes a financial decision. And so the model is to have 2 adults in a room, or at least that amount of money coming in. Because the insurance is more expensive since we're dealing with social services. And so there are a couple layers of insurance in this market. But essentially, in my opinion, like, we do have 1 room left right now in one of our houses. And this house happens to be a co-ed house. It's a 4-bedroom, 2-bath. We have men in the outside bedrooms, and then we have 2 rooms in the middle of the house, and there's a full Jack and Jill bathroom. And because there's a Jack and Jill bathroom, the state says only people who live in those bedrooms can use that bathroom. You can't walk through their bedrooms and use that. And so we would be inclined to have only women share those 2 rooms. Now, if they had children, I would say, if you're comfortable, ma'am, bring your child. If we have, which we have 2 single beds in a room, I'm fine with that kind of a thing. Now, some people might say, I don't want any kids in my special purpose boutique shelter, because that would be discrimination, quite frankly. You wouldn't be able to advertise that on your Google grant. So Google offers a $10,000 per month marketing grant for nonprofits. And you have to do fair housing. So you can't say we don't allow for children, or only men, or only women, or only a certain thing. But anyway, that's where the whole screening comes in, right? The calls come and we say, oh, we have a special house purpose in Phoenix. And we know on our Excel spreadsheet, like, hey, thanks, Ingryd, we have this house available for these people that are contacting us.
Wow. And by the way, Carolyn left to go get a pen. She messaged me and said, we have so many questions on our Instagrams. I'm not looking at my Instagram. I did set up my live just so that we could get more audience. But and then I'm seeing all these questions on the right. So I'm excited about this. As you're saying things, it's conjuring up questions for me. So for example, like, I'm buying this property that used to be used as a group home. It could technically be used as a residential assisted living. It's got 6 bedrooms, 3 baths.
Okay.
Out here in Apache Junction, Arizona. So I would love to work with you if this is something that we could do together, by the way. You could use that as an example. But I keep buying these houses that have like 4 or 5 bedrooms, 6 bedrooms. And I'm like, wow, like, maybe this is my calling here to maybe work with you. But okay, so as somebody who's buying the property, we'd have my insurance guy actually called me yesterday and said, will you be operating the property or in any way related to operating? And I said, no, I'm just the landlord. I'm renting it out to a very competent, I do have somebody who wants to rent it, but that's not been leased up yet. And he said, okay, so then the only requirement would be for me to have them at least have like certain amounts, like $1 million worth of liability, whatever, but it would be them. And then I'd have to verify that that's what they have. Is it similar to these houses for you? Like the landlord would have like homeowners insurance, which is typical, and then have the operator have their own insurance?
Yeah. So a nonprofit is normally going to have their own insurance all by itself for general liability and for, many different things, quite frankly, because it's a business, right? It's a corporation.
Right.
So when you have an LLC and you have your rental property in there, then you have your landlord policy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you were to lease, if Katie's House Foundation locked that up and leased that from you, let's say a little bit over market rents, for example, then we have our nonprofit insurance that covers the corporation. And then in addition to, every property address gets put under there for social services coverage. And that covers things like potential sexual misconduct. If someone even just claims it, they just claim it. Right. And so they whistled at me, cat called me, my roommate did, and I'm uncomfortable. So these kinds of things that could happen in an LLC situation too, except for
it happens to me when I walk outside. So yeah.
Yeah. But if you're living with the person,
right.
You need that. If you have a lease with the two people and you're subletting 2 bedrooms, you're going to have a tough situation pulling one person out unless you go through the legal process.
Right.
We have a policy that if somebody thinks something like that, for example, is happening, they need to contact me personally because I want to know about it. And then I'm going to have a third party through my insurance investigate it. And then it's going to get taken care of in one way or another. And, it's just because this is life, this is business. It could happen, but it could also be claimed that it happened and it never really did happen.
Right. And you're dealing with humans at the end of the day. Okay, cool. So what I'm hearing is if there's landlords out there, and our audience tend to be investors who have these opportunities. I saw Ray on the chat saying he's got a 6-bedroom, 4,400 square foot home. The only issue is his property has an HOA. My properties do too. So how do you work within the HOA boundaries?
I mean, it reminds me of the Airbnb type of thing, right? My thought, our properties don't have an HOA. And so of course, if you can pull out your CCNRs and read through something like this, you're going to want to do that. Just because you should anyway, as it relates to like Airbnb or renting your property. I'm sure under your rental section, it's going to say what you can and cannot do. Aside from that, though, what I would say is that we have a good neighbor policy. And so if you go on our website, katieshousefoundation.org, you can read our house rules that everyone signs, and you can read our good neighbor policy. And your neighbors should not know that is a shared house, because the people who get let in, if they don't follow those house rules and that good neighbor policy, then again, they don't have a lease. So we can actually send the sheriff over to just basically remove them. So they want to live there. That's also the other thing, is that the people who come and stay in the houses, they need the housing. They don't want to lose it. They don't want to get kicked out, right? They really need it.
Do you ever have an issue where somebody kind of messes, like, it almost makes me think of Section 8 housing, and it's really hard. If you get kicked out of Section 8 housing, you're kind of screwed. Is that kind of similar with housing like this? If somebody gets removed, is it hard for them to move into another house like this?
In our alliance, it is. So, because we're going to be looking for those kinds of things. So we'll put a 1-year ban on them.
Wow. Fascinating. Have you had any issues where you've had to kick anybody out?
No. We had a house special purpose for sober living, and we had somebody relapse. And, you know, we do have a house president in every house. And so what that means is that's an unpaid, it's a formal volunteer position for Katie's House Foundation. So they can put it on their resume. It looks really great on their resume.
Nice.
And basically, you know, that gives them a little bit of a title. But again, it's an unpaid volunteer position because they are already through our background check, and we run the highest level for even our residents. We actually run a volunteer background check. But basically now that person, you know, can communicate with us and things like that. And so that person was able to work with the person who relapsed, and he basically, you know, moved himself out, and that was no problem. We did have an aged out foster care who came to us through the city, and he stayed with us. And again, we design the house rules on a per house basis. So you have to, as an investor, if you want to do aged out foster care, those house rules might look slightly different. Sober living would definitely look different. That's in my opinion, the hardest category, because you have the drug testing, excuse me. But also the drug courts will pay for those beds, because then Julie can speak to this, right? They get their felony waived if they go and live in this.
They basically have an agreement with the court that any of the charges, and I've seen people up to 12 charges that get wiped off because they follow the program. But now the program is 18 months long. So they're not going into these shared living situations until they're outside of the rehab center and outside and had enough time that they're kind of, you know, already maybe in a halfway house for a little bit of time, and then they should be going into something like this where they want their own room, they want their own living. They can't quite afford a whole apartment, but that they want to. And being the house manager, we have one guy right now on our drug court that has that title, and of course it looks good because he's actually responsible for communicating of what's going on. You know, he's sort of the referee. He's not really in charge, but you know, he's getting that opportunity to say, you know, hey, I'm completely sober. If I see anything else going on around here, I'm going to say something, you know, and I don't want you guys to relapse either, and kind of use that momentum for everybody in the house to make it a better, and to make the, you know, you don't want to stand outside, smoke a cigarette, you know, so, you know, that kind of thing, you know, to keep track
everybody. Yeah, it helps everybody in AA too, because they don't want those temptations around. And, you know, somebody who's a sponsor, it really just kind of gets footing. That leads me into a question I wanted to ask earlier. But so you have people that are like in charge of these houses, I'm sure, because you guys you're in Arizona, Kirsten?
Yes, I'm in Arizona.
And then so you're in Chicago, Julie. So I know they're very different economies and weathers and things, and you probably can't have your eyes on every property. I'm just wondering, I know you said you have the YouTube channel where you'll educate your tenants and your teenagers and stuff. Do you guys do any kind of like financial literacy or like some self-help stuff within the house? Do you guys have bookshelves full of self-help? Like, what is it like living in the house? What is the
resources?
What happens in there? Do you like almost help them get their, not only somewhere safe to live, but like build their mindset back up so they can get back out on their own?
Yeah. So again, the special purpose, whatever it's designated for, is really going to be important. So let's just take a 4-bedroom, right, Airbnb, right? So as it relates to being inside the house, when you take our 12-hour class, we have an Excel spreadsheet of what you would buy and what you would want. So you don't have to go searching Amazon and find all these things. You get that list with the class, but basically, you know, each room has twin beds, and we make it feel nice. Now you can spend anywhere from $10,000 in furnishings and niceties and books, and even having like a computer center for the house, like a house computer center. I will tell you, most people get free cell phones from the United States government or from their city, because they recognize that you need a cell phone and email to even get a job or to know when the bus comes and things like that. So almost every adult or teenager has 1 or 2 cell phones right now. So that is not an issue. But as it relates to self-help, so the way that our 501c3 is written, your attorney can write them different ways. But of course, we do need to have a layer of support for them. And so that's our 30-hour financial literacy program that they take while they live there. And so the exit strategy for the people who live at Katie's house is that they know how to pull a free credit report. They know what credit even means. They know how to fill out a lease agreement when they leave, or even get a mortgage. We really want them to pair off and go buy a starter house, and then we can wholesale that house to them or get them creative financing so they never have to deal with homelessness ever again. But of course, they have to learn how to budget first, and what happens when things go wrong, because inevitably in life you do lose a job over the course, or you could. I mean, if you're self-employed, we talk about that too, entrepreneurship. Like, do you have some skills or a passion? Maybe you want to control your own destiny. So that's, as far as books and things, I mean, we put in board games, and, sometimes they'll have, roommate night on Wednesdays. But again, it depends on how detailed you want that house to be, because I know on our sober living house, it was $25,000 because we really went all out and did all kinds of stuff. But I think you can get away with, $10,000 because people spend so much time on their phones anyway. And then what's really cool is when you are a nonprofit, the city will come and help your house. You can call, anyone in the city and say, hey, I'm part of Katie's House Foundation. My particular house is called the Caroline House over here in, California and San Jose. And can you donate some food? If they're a food bank, they'll come with boxes of food for everybody.
Wow.
That's it's good to have, like Kirsten's talking about, this has already been done. Don't reinvent the wheel, knowing where to go to ask and how to, do that. But I know that Kirsten and I, a lot of our conversations have been about, keeping it real. And like, there are struggles at times, things don't always go the way you want them to. And you just talked about, like somebody get kicked out, and those are the kind of things that are like a stress, right? You own the building and you're like, I don't want somebody to do something bad to my house, So I think we've talked about the screening, we've talked about special purpose, keeping it that. So that's the kind of thing that, when Kirsten says, if somebody's interested in this and wants to find out about it, that every place is different, every demographic is different, but I can tell you that every place needs places like this. It's just, kind of getting into that niche of exactly where is it at, what purpose house are you going for, and is that going to work in that market?
And then also real quick, I want to touch on best practices, Julie, based on what you just said, because there are a lot of operators that are getting into this social impact aspect of real estate, and they want to do it individually, right? And there are definitely a lot of things that are going to come up. Like I was talking about, aged out foster care, for example. They will go stay with their girlfriend and never come back and leave all their stuff. And you will, if you're Katie's House Foundation, you're wondering if something bad happened to them, who's doing a welfare check? They're 18 years old. Also, what are you going to do with the stuff? You don't want to they have almost nothing to their name, and they leave their 3 pairs of Jordans that they came up on somehow, and maybe a couple hoodies, and they just are at their girlfriend's and they think they can stay over there for 3 weeks. But here we are as a foundation wondering if they're okay. And then also, if they are a private payer at that point, then if they haven't paid, now we have to have protocols in place to notify them that, hey, your stuff is going to be bagged up and given to the local church that you told us that you go to church at, or your emergency contact, because we're not a storage facility. So there's a lot of these kinds of intricacies. And I think best practices is what it comes down to, which is why Katie's House Foundation, we want to do it more like a broker model, where we want investors to come in and all of us be together in this and have these best practices, and not just have everyone doing it their own way.
So that was going to lead me into my next question, because I know what happens when something like when people learn about this, you're like, oh my gosh, I want to go do this. Like, I'm so excited to do this. getting started, I would rather ride shotgun with somebody and like, let me either give up my time or give up my money or bring you a deal and let's work on this together. And I don't want to suck you dry being an asshole. For everybody who doesn't know what an asshole is, it's when you just ask a bunch of questions and you don't take any action with it. So I don't want to bleed you guys dry of resources. You're like, oh my gosh, Caroline's texting me again, asking me for something instead of leading with value. So I know you two are both very busy women and you're helping a lot of people. So on your website, and I think maybe we'll share the screen again and go into this, but there's been a lot of questions in the side chat, how to go through the courses. But I want to ask you before we go through the courses, how could we like partner with you? If I want to just see if I lend money to you guys, can I ride shotgun and see how a deal is done all the way? Or if I bring you a house and I want it to become a sober living house or a domestic abuse house for Katie's Foundation, what does that kind of look like? Should I message you on YouTube? Is there a way? There's a contact I see right here on your page, on your website here. Just go through that website page on the contact and fill out my information. Like, how can I work with you? And what are you looking for? Are you looking for partners? Or are you looking for me to take your course?
So yes, get in touch with us through the contact form on the katieshousefoundation.org. Okay. As far as the course, we're finishing recording it out and attaching all the underlying documents. And so that will be out later this month, but definitely in August. We actually had a dry run of the course. And the reason I bring that up is because we have another website. If you want to pull it up, it's called fixertrader.com. If you want to pull that up, it'll give more information specific to the actual course outline. And I'm just waiting for you to pull that up. But then you can see, more information about what the actual course is going to be. But they're 1 hour segments. And then, the documents themselves are worth more. So on this particular website, go to the 4X tab. So the 4X is making up to 4 times your rent. So, let's just say a house in Alabama rents for $1,200. Well, Katie's House Foundation, if we rent that by the bed, we can get as much as $5,000. We can get more than $5,000 by the bed, depending on who we rent it to. Now, the expenses are more, and this is really important because a lot of people who take these classes, they don't talk about the expenses. But like Julie said, we're really cognizant of the fact that we need to dig into the expenses, the nitty gritty, because you want to make sure that you are making money and that you have a very clear plan. And so what it comes down to as an investor is first take the 12-hour course once we share it with Caroline and Ingryd. Tune into our YouTube channel at katieshousefoundation.org, which launches this Saturday. So that way you can just stay abreast of, the status of these kinds of things. Once you take the 12-hour course, it is $1,500. You can take the first couple hours for free. So basically it runs, if you do the live course, it runs Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. But the recorded course is the flex attendance that we're recording off right now. So we don't have a live course planned at this time. We just have the flex course that you would pay the $1,500 for. And, the real meat and potatoes is not just the information, it's the underlying documents that we're having to go through and take off our branding. And we're using our sober living stuff, which was the most advanced rules and standard operating procedures. And that's what we're willing to give. And people can kind of peel it back if they're like, no, I don't want to do sober living. I would rather do right now, what we have on the website is actually the most basic. And that's for people on Craigslist who basically find us on Craigslist. And those are people coming out of divorce mostly for whatever reason. They're basically have gone through some, either divorce or hospitalization. And they're like, hey, I have to move out because my husband and I are getting separated. He or she got the house and I have to find a home, right? Or it'll be 2 best friends who need, right now we're going into the fall semester. And if you call student housing at almost any college and you ask them, hey, how many people are on your wait list? They'll tell you hundreds of people right now. They still don't even have housing for them. And those college students will bunk up 2 to a room. So will veterans. So will elderly. So here in Lake Havasu City, where I live, elderly are having a really tough time because this is a seasonal vacation spot, and people only put their houses up for lease for 6 months out of the year. So elderly, 75 years old, have to find a place to live every 6 months. I feel terrible, that they can only afford $600 a month anyway, and then they have to find a roommate every 6 months. It gets very complicated, especially for elderly on fixed income. But I'm just saying, I hope that answers your question. Basically, a couple different things there.
No, I think that was great. I'm going to hand it back to Ingryd because I hogged the ball for a second.
No, I love it. I love it. All great questions. Okay. So.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask, you guys also do this in Georgia, or are you guys only in Chicago and Arizona?
We're willing to do it all throughout the United States.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead, Ingryd.
Cool. I know that there were some questions in the chat, and if maybe we could pull a couple in.
Absolutely.
I know Caroline kind of asked this question, which is, if we purchase homes, like how can we JV with you? Me personally, like, not that I don't have a bleeding heart for folks' situation, I really do, but like my goal is really just to focus on acquisitions of properties. So you said we could lease properties to Katie's foundation, right? And then just have somebody else operating them if that's possible?
Yeah, so we would put in place a team who would take care of that, because again, here I am in Arizona, my stuff is in Alabama, and then Julie, it is good if you are near the house. If you want to do it yourself and oversee it, if you want us to put in place a team, then we need to have that conversation. As far as JVing, we need to just talk about that. Certainly we will buy properties. One thing that I would bring up that's really important is having an LLC and having a nonprofit. So you would never want your nonprofit to own assets, because that's charity. And a nonprofit, as far as a legacy goes, what's really cool about it is that it lives in perpetuity. And I don't know if people know that, but if you put something in an EIN of a nonprofit and then you sell that, those proceeds stay with the nonprofit. So it's a charity. You can't just wind down a charity like you can an LLC, and you can't trade assets like that. But anyhow, so we would be back to like an LLC, right? Basically, we're acquiring a property that maybe you bring us on a wholesale scale through creative financing, where if we can take advantage of their low interest rate that they had taken out a couple years ago, then that would be amazing. So yes, we're definitely looking at doing that. The most important thing in this space as it comes to making the money roll, because we know that we can put together the house, we need to make sure that the location of the house for the special purpose, that those two things are aligned. For example, a sober living facility, you would not want in a C-class neighborhood where they could sell dime bags off the porch. And you have the literally the drug judge is the one who's hiring you for the drug court to help these people stay clean. You wouldn't put them in a C-class neighborhood. You would put those in like a B+ class, like as close to A as you could without ruffling feathers, to take them out of that easy environment, and show them.
And if I can interject there, Kirsten, I would say that, like, for layman's terms, it's let's make sure that the bus stop isn't right outside in front of the property. Let's make it so that they should have a car to get around. They have to walk a long way to get to places other than the grocery store. But, those kind of, placements and those are the things that.
Those help with like sober living if they have to further distance.
Because we got to, you have the like Kirsten was saying, they can go walk outside and their environment is exactly what they came from, and they just can't get away from it. And they got the bus stop there, they've got the dime bag on the corner, they've got the alcohol. It's just it's a real
relapse
challenge. It's a challenge sometimes to say that, I've got this great house and I want to do this. Well, then we need to find the right special purpose for that house. And sometimes that can be not jiving with what maybe the owner wanted to do or something like that. So sometimes, as much as the numbers sound great, the actual living situation doesn't turn out to be the way we want it.
You got to think a little outside the box of the house.
Yeah. Right. The location still makes a big difference. I mean, and by the way, we're talking this within the context of helping people raise up from the environments they're in.
Right.
This is the same thing regardless of what we're talking about, right? We talk a lot about this in this podcast, but your environment makes such a difference. And that's whether you're a recovering addict or you're somebody who can't seem to take action, right?
Yeah.
Your circle and your environment is absolutely what will impact your life, like how you will move and navigate through life.
So
Absolutely.
That makes me think about another thing. Because I have family members that are alcoholics. When I lived in Florida, I used to live in the Clearwater area of Florida, and Florida is a big rehab area. And I had some employees when I had a business down there that kept relapsing, and I kept giving them another chance. And I'm just thinking about, that's why I'm so familiar with AA. I've gone to a few AA meetings and tried to give people opportunities. Do you guys ever, and this is maybe I'm thinking too ambitiously, and it could go into the a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. Do you ever like incentivize maybe like charity or community work for the people that are in those houses? Do you try and help them give back? Does it make them feel good? Oh, cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great question. And they want to give back. They normally are givers to start with, actually. And that's kind of why they maybe are in the situation that they're in, because they're very trusting of people and they want to help people. And so that's kind of a nice circle that they, will go to the food bank, or if there's only one person that has a vehicle in the house, that person you'll probably tap them to be the house manager, or we would tap them to be the house manager. Right. And now what's really important, of course, if they're trying to stay sober, is sobriety is always first. So you would never want to overload any person, but basically, they help the house inside. The environment inside is just as important, right, as the environment outside. And so to Julie's point earlier, it's not necessarily about A class, B, C, war zone kind of a thing. It's more about what's happening inside, what's happening outside, who are the players, and what are their goals in life? Are they lifting everyone up? Is it clean? And is everyone subscribing to kind of the same goal? Which what we have found definitely is that no matter where they're coming from, is the financial literacy piece. They're saying, I need to fix my credit, or I don't have any credit, and I've got to get 6 or 7 months or a year under my belt to save money. So even though I could afford a 1-bedroom apartment, I don't even want to right now. I'm going to just pay for one room, or I'm willing to share a room. And that way, let me just pocket all this money and figure out what I'm going to do in 12 months. And hey, if you guys will help me get a house, I'm all for that.
That's really cool. And that probably helps your website. You get more reviews, you get more donors. That all in all is just good business practice. It's really cool.
We're just getting started here. So, I mean, our YouTube is just fresh. There's not even anything on it. We're happy to be on your guys' channel because we've been spending so much time in the nitty gritty of things. And we're still going to be doing that. We've just learned enough now that, having a property manager is still something that's important. Having a maintenance crew is still important. Managing these expenses is important. A lot of property managers don't understand the model, and they think renting by the room is too much of a hassle. But then when you start talking to them about that, again, I bring up the nonprofit thing, because, even though we can, as a nonprofit, put ourselves as employees and pay a reasonable wage, we get free Office 360, we get free DocuSign, we get, it's just people will donate to you, and property managers, once they understand and they care about the cause, they will donate to, and they will donate their time and their money too. And of course, they have the opportunity to meet with influential people in their city. Like, if you have another nonprofit who's been around for 40 years, which we have one right now that, we would like to talk more with, our newest property manager, she's going to go and meet with them. She's already familiar with them, but now she has a warm introduction and actual something really good to talk about.
Oh, wow. All right. Before I get to the rest of the questions, because I was taking all of my notes. if we were going to get started in a state and say that we wanted to, somebody mentioned California earlier, who should you reach out to? Because I'm very interested. I've thought about, I don't want to push a baby out of my body, but I'm very into fostering and adopting because I feel like there's so many kids in the foster system. I worked at the Boys and Girls Club in college. I almost became a teacher. And then I was like, oh, I'm a crier. So I don't know if I could have done that. But aging out, like kids that are like, I joined the Army. I mean, I had two parents. So I joined the Army, and I know a majority of the people that were in the military with me just really didn't have any guidance. And they didn't know how to get started. I'm very curious. Like I've already told Ingrid, I wanted to make like a whole little apartment complex that was very walkable, where there's a garden, there's financial literacy. Like I want to do that for single parents and domestic abuse victims. But the aged out foster care is like near and dear to my heart just because like save our kids, give our kids a chance. Yeah. Who should you reach out to at your state level? Who should you be talking to find out how to do the housing for aged out foster kids?
So, I mean, social services, right? You can Google human resources for the city. Julie, do you have anything about like Birmingham Human Resources, for example, or your city human resources? Julie?
Well, so, and Kirsten and I had this earlier. We were talking about a little bit more on the elderly side. Catholic Charities is who I would go to for the elderly, because they're the ones that help out those people that are getting, older. They didn't take care of their house. They've been thrown out. Now they have nowhere to go. I mean, I don't know directly because, every kind of area is different, but here in the Midwest, there are like local, I mean, I would say there's not like one big, center that everybody can go to get help for something like this. But, the CEDAs, which is the area around here that basically takes in homeless people, not the direct, there's direct shelters and there's direct day centers that they have out here. But I would reach out to the local area that the homeless go to, because those are the people that are going to say, yeah, like we get a lot of the older people, but this is where I would go for somebody that's 8, and Kirsten and I's podcast are actually targeting these kind of kids that are 18. They're what I call couch jumpers. They're just staying on a couch for the night. They're going from house to house. Their friends, they stay there as long as their parents let the friends' parents let them, and they go to the next place. And they either do join the Army, or they try to get something in particular as a resident of a university, because they don't have anything and they don't have anywhere to go. And their only hope is that they can. So a lot of those times it's going to be something like we have a organization here that it's like an opportunity center. And the opportunity center is the place where these kids are going to have to go to get those. They'll deal with the food banks. They'll make sure that they get clothes. So it is still a center that everybody else can utilize, but these kids are basically, not knowing what to do because they don't have that. They will know where the local center is. So I mean, it's hard for me to answer your question. There's not like a, specific spot, but they're all going to be, yeah.
So before our time is up here, on that note, Julie, this is part of the alliance and the mission, is that there isn't any one place in the United States for any one of these populations. They're very regional, but our investors are nationwide. And so by virtue of the alliance and us just working together, in keeping things short, meaning like, hey, right, I know that this judge will sign a contract and pay $860 a bed for this population of people in this area. I only have one house. I would like to know an investor who has a second house, because when my house is full, then I can throw you that business. And so this is even where police officers like Julie, right? And you have San Diego, you have Phoenix, you have all these places that have a lot of homelessness. And the people don't want to go to the homeless shelter. And also they may have come up through the family court and always been in custody through, and they are even a little bit leery of continuing working with the court system, and they're trying to figure it out. And so in particular with your question about children, child trafficking and then also foster children, those are going to be things that are under the radar, right? That's going to be where you are picking up the phone and you're Googling and you're not advertising, hey, I offer housing for sex traffic victims. You would never shout that from the rooftops. That would be quiet through an alliance like this, where we just happen to know who wants to help those particular populations and who has we have a security system on our house, on every house. Our model has a security system. But of course, when you start getting into certain populations, you need more security. Maybe, depending on where the area is and like all kinds of things. So the point is that right now, we actually need everyone to work together in the investor community. If we start getting involved in this space, our Excel spreadsheet is going to grow exponentially. This is why we created fixertrader.com, is so people, for Katie's house, that's how we vet properties. And also we can have people trade wholesale deals and notes and creative financing. But really the purpose behind creating that was so we could look for properties for our alliance to trade, essentially. But also we're looking at building something else, which is like that, where police officers and social workers and also our alliance can see. It's like an Airbnb, but it's only for people that are part of helping, right? It's like, hey, I have 3 rooms available for domestic violence victims, because that's really a huge problem right now, is when you are the victim yourself, or you are the aged out foster care, or you're 16 years old and you're homeless. If you Google that, what comes up right now, and I know because I put it on Yelp and I put it on Google, the options are very limited. You can only pick like homeless shelter, and you can't even put it on Airbnb because it's not an Airbnb type of a thing. And then you can put it on Craigslist, but it's not really a room for rent to just anybody. It's a room for rent to a special, it's really social services. And that's where this alliance, we've got to figure this out, guys, because you're not going to do it for us.
Yeah. And that's the one thing that I always, I was on patrol and I'd have somebody that I knew was going to be in a situation where, somebody might come in and pay for a hotel room for them for a small amount of time, but that's not going to fix their situation. So as Kirsten said, we've talked about this, having a special place for somebody to go to say, oh, okay, I'm in this area. And I mean, granted, there's going to be a big, gap probably for a lot of this, but it maybe at one point become like an Airbnb where more and more people will have the ability to do shared housing, that people will have a better place to shop around for more affordable places. And those people that are trying to figure it out can get that specialty education when it comes to money and getting out on their own a little bit better, because obviously we don't teach that in high school.
Yeah, you're left on your own and you got to figure it out. And as we can see, I mean, the social services are overwhelmed in every area. I mean, I'm in San Jose, but I went to San Francisco for the first time a couple of days ago. And I mean, I've never been down the West Coast. This is my first time. I drove over to Seattle and I drove down Seattle. We almost went to Portland, but we looked up and it was like, don't go to Portland. There's like camps everywhere. And it's sad. And, you want to do something. And again, I didn't become a teacher because it was hard for me seeing. I saw a child come in one time and I went to IU. So I'm from Indiana, Julie, from Kokomo. And I went to Indiana University and we're big on basketball. And I remember I was the athletic intern at Boys and Girls Club. And how, if you're from Indiana, you know how big Indiana basketball is. And we got this little boy 2 tickets for the basketball game one time. Well, we gave him to his mom. And the next day we're like, hey, Billy, how was the game yesterday? And he was just like, what game? And what are you talking about? And his mom spent the money, or the tickets, sold the tickets and spent the money on something else. And he came in with holes on the toes of his shoes so his feet would fit. And I was just like, I'm going to fight a parent. I can't do this. Like, I am so passionate about that. So, I mean, I know you guys are just getting your YouTube up. I'm actually I'll have to talk with Ingryd. She mentioned her Wi-Fi went out, but I do a few little, just lunch episodes. Like tomorrow, I'm doing one with one of the guys who's been on our episode before. His name's Michael Frankie. He stops a lot of foreclosures, pre-foreclosures and auctions in Kansas City. We're doing every lunch on Thursday. We're going to talk about how we can help people. I'd love to spread this message some more, because this is something that's near and dear to my heart. And this is, there's so many opportunities and there's so many ways that we could give back. Love to make it louder. And it makes me think of, it's hard to find homes. How many nonprofits could you open up so Google gives you that $10,000 in marketing, and we could just post more and make it maybe like a form, maybe even a Reddit form? I'm just like, all the gears are spinning in my head. How can we make it easier for people to find housing? I'd love to have you guys, Ingryd as well. We'd love to have you guys back on the podcast so we can talk about this in depth.
Yeah, thank you. We would love to come back and keep the conversation going. And I know that we had a lot to cover today. More right on the agenda. And so thank you. We'd love to come back and spread the message.
That'd be so cool. Well, I know I want to be mindful of your time, because it's 5:02 where I am, and you're in Arizona, so you should be good. And Julie, I know it's almost 8 o'clock your time. So
it's actually it's 7 o'clock here. I'm not quite all the way to Eastern.
Okay. So I want to be mindful, but I want to ask you guys, and this is something, if there's anything else you'd like to cover, feel free, but there's one question I ask everybody at the end of all of these episodes. And I'm very curious, if you guys could go back in time at any point in your life, and you have 2 minutes to talk to yourself, you have 2 minutes any time in your life, what would you go back, or when would you go back, and what would you say to yourself? And I'm going to start with you. Is it Kirsten or Kristen?
Kirsten, like ear.
Kirsten. Got it. Okay. So Kirsten, when and what would you say when you'd go back with those 2 minutes?
Well, I love that question. It's pretty amazing. I think I would like to go back to being 20. I just hit the 4th floor last week. And so, I was just getting into finance, and I have loved almost every minute of it, right? We had the 2008 downturn, and things in 2012 started getting better. What I would tell myself is don't buy in 2006.
Yeah.
And, I would probably have gotten into the nonprofit and the YouTube space earlier, just because we have TV at our fingertips. And I think if you run a channel or you're involved in an industry for 10 and 15 years, you can make a huge difference. And so if you can get involved now in the movement, with shared housing, and pick a population, in 10 years from now, in your corner, you will have made a huge difference.
Ooh, I like that. I'm going to get to you in a second, Julie. So for everybody, I say this to all of it, because every week I introduce the new people that are getting into SubTo, kind of like how to not be overwhelmed. That goes back into that phrase, narrow your focus and expand your reach. You're going to be able to, I like to cover the camera so everybody can see that. If you're juggling like 18 balls, you can't cover the entire area. So focus on one thing, and you can excel, and you can help more people in that. So great opportunity to say focus. And remember, focus stands for follow one course until successful. So everybody, don't get distracted by all the shiny objects. If you have anything, reach out to Katie's House Foundation with them, and you guys can have them leased from you for homes. They need more beds. Let's help them out. Now, with that being said, Julie, I'm curious about yours. 2 minutes, you go back in time, anywhere, when, and what would you say?
At least I had a minute to think about it. I would say that I would go back to probably sometime around my 25th year in life. And that I became a cop when I was 26. Okay. I wouldn't change that for anything. I just, part of, what you just said about the focus, I think I would tell myself, there's no such thing as multitasking. If you can't, you can't do more than one thing at once and do it good. You can do one thing and do it good, then you're set. And I think that, like as time has gone on, I think looking back, I would tell myself not to, play squirrel so much, and, look, and just try to stay focused on something and get really good at it. It took me a long time to come to the point where I'm at now. I feel like, now I can really contribute, and I can give back. Not that I didn't do that over my career, but I just think that, I did really get distracted a lot in my younger years. And I think I would have gotten a lot better at helping certain populations and doing certain things better had I not been so spread out about what I was doing.
Oh, I love that. Both of your responses are similar to what I said when I was asked that for the first time. And you can help those families and those communities better and faster. And you'll have a larger impact when you focus on one thing at a time, or at least that's been my experience. But mine was similar to yours, Kirsten. It was go back and learn about financial literacy a little bit sooner and be able to help out more. So I want to be mindful because it is, what we should do is set up another time. And I appreciate you moving because we met Tim Ballard the night that you were supposed to do the podcast with us originally.
Wow.
Who just filmed The Sound of Freedom. It was really cool because our community raised $550,000.
Wow, that's awesome.
Well, yeah, actually, May's in the other room. He has 5 convoys ready to go take action in a bunch of countries right now. So we'll probably do another raise for that. But I would love to have you guys back on it. Ingrid's like, my Wi-Fi, my hotspot's not working. So I told her we want to have you guys back. We should absolutely connect so we could talk on Instagram Live. And the last thing I want to say for everybody, if you're still watching this or if you're on Instagram Live and you're watching the recording, if you guys would please help us. We want to be able to impact our communities more and help everybody. If you just click the like button on this video, my YouTube, is TheCarolineCain. And then you can see on Kirsten's right there, their YouTube is going to be Katie's House Foundation. It's going to be live this Saturday. So if you're watching the recording, it's probably up already, but go like their stuff and learn from it. And then your YouTube channel for education, is that going to be on the Fixed Trader YouTube?
No, so we're going to keep everything on the Katie's House Foundation. And that way it's just one place that you guys can get everything. And then if you have teenagers, so, Julie and I are doing the Normalized Money show. We tape off on Mondays and then we put that up for the weekend. So that way the teenagers can tune in, ages 15 to 19. We really want to make sure that they are picking up on some of this stuff. It's not geared to the investor. It's geared towards them. And also it's not just for teens. It's for people that have never, right? They don't know about life insurance, for example. They don't know about, again, how to pull a free credit report right now, today, how to get a credit card today. What's the max limit that you should have? These are so important for every single person to know, right? It's adulting 101. And so we actually, last year, I put together that course. I taught it live in a classroom for teenagers on Mondays and Tuesday nights. And that ran for 4 months. And the kids actually said that they came in, they did a survey. Their parents actually sent them. They didn't want to come. They were 15, 16, 17 years old. But, they came and they didn't know the terms. And then they did their midterm. They all got 100% on their midterm. Wow. They did their final exam, which was a life plan. And now they have a plan. I mean, they learn their strengths, right? What are their Strength Finder assessment by Gallup? It costs $25 that any person can take at age 10, and then you could take it later as an adult. But these are the things that are so critical to everybody. So you're happy in your work. And you also can manage your money, because even if you make $10 million or $16 million, we know somebody, an acquaintance, they have 400 shared houses for human trafficking. And let's just say that they make 17 million and they only walk away with a slice of that, but they do it because they love it. They could make a lot more. The point is that, right, people lose money to expenses if they're not managing their expenses. And so we need to make sure that everyone knows how to manage their money if they're going to own houses, and most importantly, not be homeless or not sure how to get around in life.
Be a productive member of society. Now, I want one more thing. Liz also mentioned, she's on Instagram Live. She said that she was in housing similar to this 18 years ago as a single mom. So she's very grateful that you guys are doing this. But she said, okay, where again? My son needs this. So it'll be on your YouTube every Saturday?
Correct. So we will put it up on Saturday morning at 6 a.m. California time or Arizona time. So that'll hit, Texas an hour later, Georgia an hour after that, and New York is 3 hours after that.
Beautiful. Guys, I didn't really, and that's financial literacy. I think that's probably because you and I both wanted to learn at 20, and that's really a really good tool for everybody to understand.
Really quick, thank you. And really quick, so the Normalized Money project, and not the show, but that's where the 30-hour class is. And so you can go to normalizemoney.com. That is last year when we had the classroom. You can actually see right now the full curriculum. So if you go to normalizemoney.com, you can look at this year's 2023 curriculum. Again, that's being taped off. We have homework that goes into it. I actually look at the kids' homework, so they have to email it to me if you guys purchase the class. It's only $600 for 30 hours, but that's just to pay for, tutors to basically look at their homework. So that's not a passive activity. The Normalized Money Project is a formal class, and then whoever takes it, they're expected to do the homework and email that in, and then either myself or normally I'll have some of the students act as TAs. They TA each other to look at their budgets and help me grade things. But again, that's $600 because we don't want it to be passive like YouTube where they're just listening. We want them to actually, like the budget class, just so you know, I bring that up because that's class number, I think it's 4. That is the hardest class for the heart for them because they're like, oh man, Starbucks is expensive and Netflix, and I got to get rid of my Netflix because I can't afford my rent and my car and my insurance. So if you want your kid to see what the real life looks like, these are classes that they absolutely should go through.
I love this. I'm wondering now, because again, I just want to make it, would you, because we're talking about creative finance, let me stop sharing my screen so we can still see you. Is it possible if we could somehow create some kind of sponsorship, or we will sponsor kids, we'll front the money for them, but they have to pay it back over time to pay for another child to take this class?
That'd be awesome.
I think that's just because once you budget things, and I love at the very top of this, because I was going to ask you, I'm even thinking, could we just raise money so you could buy The Cash Flow Game by Rich Dad Poor Dad? I love Robert Kiyosaki's. I love playing games to understand the concept of things. And I saw it is in Tuesday. You go through the audiobook, Rich Dad Poor Dad 20th anniversary. I actually just did a challenge with our little community. So people did the 75 soft challenge with us, and we reread Rich Dad Poor Dad, but we took like a month to reread it, and we did all of the homework together in the newest version. Awesome. And it opened so many people's eyes. So I would love, I'm the person who buys something on Amazon and I write my little note on it and I gift it to people. I would love to create something where we can just fund having that cash flow game in houses, or getting people to do that. And then, but I like the part where you're making them take ownership, because if somebody else pays for it for you, you're not really going to value it as much. I think maybe we front it and then they pay for the next kid over a period of time while they have a job, if that's even possible.
Yeah, that is totally possible. And actually, so how we had it worked out, which I could still do because we haven't finished recording out the 30 hours. But basically on Tuesdays, what I do is like Deal or No Deal for money, where they can actually earn money. And so in the sponsorship, like let's say that you were able to sponsor a child for $600. Mm-hmm. That money is going to go towards, let's say, Mary. And that's for Mary. And that money goes $25 to pay for her Strength Finder exam. We don't buy the board game for them. We found that the Strength Finder exam, we do want them to have it at home and play it with their family or their friends, because it's like Monopoly, but way better. And, the Strength Finder is some money, and then, paying a TA or having someone like myself grade it and work with them. But the point is that a large chunk of that money goes to our quizzes, where we incentivize the kids to know the right answers, because we give pop quizzes on Tuesdays. And then if they get the question right, they can decide if they want to, basically bet their $10 or whatever it is, because we have envelopes between $1 and actually there's $150 in all of the 20 that they can pick from. And if they get the $50 or if they get the $20, let's call it $20 for this example, maybe they're wanting to do Deal or No Deal and get the $50 envelope. And so they have to actually think through, do I know the answer to the next question? Like, how confident am I, right? And also it gives them an opportunity, like, am I a gambler or am I conservative? How do I feel about investing and just money in general? Because some kids would be like, I'm not going to bet again. Like, no way, I'm going to keep my $1. You know, you've got 5s up there, you got 10s, you have 15. But you know, some people, anyway, the money, it is helpful. And yes, so they do earn the money.
That's
and
cool.
Actually too, we want them to become banked individuals. And so what a banked individual is right, where they actually, we talk about stocks in the class during one of the classes. And, you know, we see who can actually pick a stock, because we talk about the best stocks during recessions over the years. So in a good market and a bad market. And so we see who actually goes and opens up, let's say, a Charles Schwab account with their $50 that they won during a Deal or No Deal, and not won, earned. And then, you know, what did they pick out of the 10 stocks that we might consider, depending on the market today? And then at the end of the class, how is that stock doing? And what it does, like my son, he's 15, he came to the class. Now he's 16 years old. It's been a year and he's still looking at his stock, you know, and he wants to buy more stock, and he now has a sense for how he feels about money. So as it relates to paying it forward, I think that they go out and they get a job. They know how to get a job because they learn that in the 30 hours of class. They know what to wear. They can shake a hand. They can tell them, these are my strengths. My son got a job, you know, his first time around already at 16. So they can have the money to actually pay it forward to the next student.
I like that. Well, I was thinking, is this something that, like, I guess I'm even just thinking not just the teens in general. I meant like the children that are aged out of foster care. Is this something that we can buy the course for them? And if they get a job, yeah,
that would be, gosh, that would be so helpful if you could do that for them.
Absolutely. In particular. I need to get something so I can put it on my link tree so it can be easy to find on my Instagram. And when people are on Zoom with me, I have a QR code. So that'd be awesome. Well, ladies, thank you so much for running over. Julie, I want to hand the mic to you. Is there anything else that we should know that we can help you out with? Or is there anything that we could do to help the local police in Chicago? What is the last thing you'd like to say to wrap us up here before I close this out?
No, we're working on the Katie's House Foundation. We're working on trying to get the investors interested in making the shared housing, because obviously we're just 2 people. So we want to get other people the knowledge that they need to start this and just get the ball rolling and the movement rolling. I mean, it will be so much easier, like, as we get going with Kirsten having K money, I can get some of those, integrated into the police departments and the social services and the places like that, where it gets a lot easier for people to get the word out and to share it.
I love it. Well, ladies,
thanks for having us.
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you for coming on. And I know Ingryd wishes she could have signed us all off here. So just one last time, everybody, please, if you could actually share this video. If you take the time really quickly, click the share button on this video and just send it to 3 friends and let them know that we'll get something set up. We'll reach out to Kirsten and Julie so we can have something where we can maybe buy a course for students so they can pass it on. Let's help clean up our communities. Let's help everybody. Because we've all been in a situation in our life where we were down and out, and it's good to give. Giving really, really helps everybody all around. So thank you, ladies, so much for coming on here. We'll have to set something up so we can go live again once we get that link up and everybody can donate. And don't forget, guys, on Saturday, 6 a.m. is their first class at Katie's House Foundation on YouTube. Ladies, thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Yes. Bye, everybody. See you next time.